It's a sunny Saturday, and that means we're starting some seeds today. So I've got all of my seeds here on the table next to me, and I'm getting ready to start seeds for my early spring home garden. I like to plant things like lettuce and kale, collards, chard, endive, lots of greens that really do pretty well in cooler weather. They're very cold tolerant. So I live in Northeast Ohio, which is Zone 6A, and we will continue to get freezing nights until mid-May. And so when I'm thinking about a garden, I like to plant things as early as possible to start getting fresh food as soon as possible. And so for me, I'm looking at what kind of varieties are really cold tolerant and they can handle those freezing nights we're gonna get in the early spring. So I've got many varieties of greens all laid out on my table here. And I'm just looking at which ones are going to be the most cold tolerant. And from experience, I know which do better than others here where I live in Northeast Ohio. So things like kale, I know is going to do very well. Spinach is definitely going to do good. I have spinach that has been growing over winter and it's starting to wake up again and it's completely fine. I'm also thinking about this endive. So I'm really just taking my time to look through the different varieties here and refresh myself with what is going to grow best this time of year. So just to check myself, I wanted to make sure that I'm not planting too early. It is February 18th, so for some, you may be thinking it's way too early to start seeds, but like I said, you can start growing vegetables in your home gardens pretty early, a lot earlier than most people are led to believe. And so I've been keeping a garden journal for the last couple years. It's just a normal notebook. Nothing really fancy about it. I've done things on the computer and spreadsheets and all of that, but I found that it just became too cumbersome when I'm trying to quickly write things down as I'm starting seeds or planting things out in the garden. And I just want to jot down some quick notes, and the spreadsheets, you know, it does take a little bit more effort to go in onto a computer and create those. Although I do love a good spreadsheet. I'm a project manager by career, and I'm in spreadsheets all the time. So I love spreadsheets, but what I found as a gardener and kind of getting your hands in the dirt and you just need something that's kind of quick and easy and mobile, a notebook has worked best for me in that capacity. But I do keep all of my notes in here about when I'm starting seeds, when I'm planting things out in my garden, and if I remember, I will jot down notes about when I'm harvesting, but that's a little bit harder because you harvest things at all different times. So I was just kind of looking through my notebook and looking back at 2021. I was starting a lot of my spring seeds around February 14th through like March 8th. And then in 2022, I was starting things around February 27th. So I'm right in that window of where I've started seeds in the past. And I feel good about getting these greens started today. I really want to get my raised garden right behind my house where I'm planting all of my greens this year, really close to the house, so it's very accessible. And I also have 2 green stock planters that I'm going to fill with these greens as well. So I can get some crops going very early. So I'm planning that it's gonna take about a week for these seeds to germinate, and then I'm gonna have to grow them under cover, either in my house or in my greenhouse for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And by that time, they will be a good enough size to be able to go and be planted out without cover. And also the temperatures are going to be a little bit warmer. We still will have some freezing nights, but it won't be quite as drastic as we're experiencing right now, where we are going from a 60-degree day down to 20 degrees overnight, and then the next day might be 40 degrees and then dropping down to 15 degrees. Like, we are all over the place, up and down, so I'm not gonna worry about planting too much outside right now, but in the next 4 to 6 weeks, it'll be safe and I will have a head start on a lot of food coming to fruition at that point already. Okay, so I'm going to do the Mabuna mustard. I liked this one a lot last year. It does have a kind of a spicy taste, but not too bad, and this one did do well in the cool weather, so I really like that one. It also looks pretty cool. I'm gonna do the verdele spinach, and I've got just a Bloomsdale long-standing spinach. Both of these will do excellent in the cooler weather. Spinach just loves the cold. And then I'm gonna do 2 different kale varieties. Now this one I think is like a red kale or Ragged Jack type kale. It was saved, someone gave it to me, but the variety wasn't listed. But I think from remembering what their garden looked like, that's kind of what it was. And I'm also going to finish off this seed packet that I've had a couple years of the Dwarf Blue Curled Vates. And this one is a shorter kale plant, but I've also noticed with this variety that the cabbage moths don't go after it as much, so there's like less worms I'm dealing with on this. So this one also does good in the cold. I've got ruby red Swiss chard and yellow Swiss chard. Very excited about just growing these specific colors of chard because they look really nice. I'm going to do this broadleaf Batavian endive. So this one is cold hardy, and isn't that one just beautiful? So we're gonna start this one today. Collards. I've learned my lesson with collards that you don't need many plants for collards. These plants get so big. I'm not the biggest fan of collards, but I'm learning to like them more and more as I grow them and just try them in different recipes. And I'm only gonna do just a couple of these because really you don't need that many plants of collards. You can feed an army with collards. And then finally, this lettuce Rouge de Hiver. This is a winter lettuce, very hardy. Grown this for several years and I really like it. So let's get outside to the greenhouse and get some seeds planted. Yay! We have made it outside and now I'm gonna start my seeds. I already have all of my potting cups ready to go. I actually worked on this earlier in the week when we were having like a really crazy 70-degree day and the greenhouse was so lovely. So I just got out here and prepared a little bit by getting my potting cups ready because I knew that I was gonna be planting this weekend. It's always good to try and do some prep work when you can. I literally only had 10 minutes to get out here and do anything, so I took those 10 minutes and got my cups already, and it's just I'm happy today. Future Lex is happy today because that's one less thing I have to do and I can just get my seeds in these cups. So I actually went ahead and found 8 different plant varieties that I want to grow, and this is actually going to work out pretty well. I have everything kind of laid out on how I'm going to do these. So I'm going to do 6 pots of this red Swiss chard, 6 pots of yellow, 4 of the arugula. So I kind of laid them out that way just to see what I'm going to do here. It's always good to have a plan. And I'm going to do lots of kale. I've got a purple kale that I had saved some seeds for, so hopefully these work. And this kale, this is like dinosaur kale, spinach. And I'm gonna put a good amount of seeds in each of the cups. I prefer to sow heavily and thin the plants out later on. It's just really time consuming to take one individual seed and put it in each cup. For me, I just kind of sprinkle, you know, a handful into each one and I'll thin it out later, or I'll separate them and up pot them into bigger cups. I do have videos on how to start seeds and how to up pot your seedlings if you're interested in learning more about those in a more specific how-to video. So check those out and I'll link them down below as well. I'm just so glad that we are having nicer weather. Last winter, it snowed so much, but this year we have not really gotten a lot of snow. It's kind of unusual, but I'm not complaining about it. It's actually been kind of nice. It's amazing to think that each one of these little seeds are going to be their own plant. There's so many just in my hand. That's so much food that's going to feed us. And I'm just gonna gently pat these kale seeds in. Oops. You don't have to overthink it. I think we can get worried about all the little nuances when it comes to planting seeds and starting plants. But really, what I found is as long as you're not pushing the seeds like way down deep and just kind of leave them on top and patting them in gently, they germinate pretty well. And I'm going to take my spray bottle, just kind of spray these ones in. I have my little junk bucket here, scraps and things. I keep all of my old plant labels because I recycle them. I try to use them as many times as possible. So like I'll scratch off, you know, one side and write on the back, or what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut them actually. So I can use a lot of my plant markers multiple times because they cost money, you know, and I don't like just throwing them away, so. I will say there is something therapeutic about just spending time sowing seeds. It's just kind of like a quiet peace. The repetitiveness of the task. I really like to work on things like this when I have some music going in the background or a podcast. But I think today, especially, like I just kind of enjoy the quiet of it. And I hear, you know, neighborhood sounds out in the background. Someone's got their chainsaw out. So I hear the buzzing in the background, and then I have my chickens behind me in the garden, and they're, you know, cooing, and the roosters are crowing, and I hear the cars and stuff going down the road, and it's after being so much in the house through the winter, it's kind of nice just to listen to the sounds of the world around me. And that's my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood, and it's nice. So I'm going to set the camera up on kind of like a time lapse while I continue to work through sowing all of these seeds. These are all very satisfying. They all look so nice and neat. Having all of these greens sowed just makes it feel like the winter is actually over. Almost over. We're getting close. Closer every day. I am always thankful to have the break. After a long season, by November, I'm definitely ready to just chill and not have to worry about all the outside work that has to be done. But definitely by this time of year, by February, I feel like I have rested enough and I'm very ready to get started on things. So we're easing back into it, seed starting. It's a very slow, meditative process to start seeds. I mean, there's really not a lot like flashy to see here, but yeah, it just feels good to have all of these done, and I'm gonna take them in the house and keep them on my grow rack, and I'll show you a little bit what that looks like. Greenhouse here, it's still too cold for these to start germinating now. I mean, I could leave them out here and they may germinate sometime in the next couple weeks on their own. And then they would just kind of grow up in a cooler environment, which is fine because all of these plants can definitely handle that, especially being in the greenhouse, they're undercover, so they're not going to get hit with any kind of hard frost or snow. But I really want these plants to be ready to plant outside in like 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. It's all very dependent on how the weather is. If it looks like it's going to be like in the 20s, you know, upper 20-degree weather, I won't plant them out. But if we're hovering, you know, between like 32 to 35 pretty consistently overnight, that's when I'm gonna feel pretty good about setting these outside. I will have to harden all of these off because they're gonna grow up their first couple weeks of life in my warm house in a very controlled environment. And if I just set them outside in a 30-degree day, they would die. So you have to acclimate all of your seedlings to the outside weather before you permanently keep them in the ground when you start seeds in a controlled environment like your house. If I were to sow these seeds now out in my garden beds, which I could do, they probably won't germinate, but in a couple weeks they would start germinating and they would grow, and then they would be used to the harshness of the weather outside. Very similar idea to like winter sowing, when you're doing all the winter sowing in jugs and totes and containers and stuff. But these are going to be in a controlled inside environment because yeah, I just want the plants to be, you know, probably about like this big when I'm gonna plant them outside, so that way they just have a head start to grow quicker and I'll be able to harvest them quicker. So that's, I mean, that's the biggest reason why do any of this now. I'm trying to extend my season, or in this case, get into my season early, trying to pull my season in because I miss having fresh food. Fortunate enough that I was able to preserve quite a bit last year, but greens are one of those things that it's really hard to preserve, and we like to eat a lot of salads in our house, and I like to have a variety of greens to mix into those salads when I can, and we haven't really had that. It's just been pretty basic grocery store romaine lettuce because I'm also kind of a frugal person when it comes to buying food, and I haven't wanted to pay the prices of a lot of the things that we would typically be eating. So I'm happy to start growing them again because my mentality is like, I don't want to buy that if I can grow it, which may not always serve me well, especially this time of year. But that's how I am, and very happy to get a head start on all of this. So let's take it into the house and I'll show you my grow station. Okay, we're back inside the house now, and I'll show you my seed starting station that I keep here in my dining room. This is a steel shelf that I got from Home Depot a couple years back, and I do use it for storage of canning jars and my pressure cooker and roasting oven and all kinds of stuff, but I've been clearing that out because we're back to seed starting time. And I have these LED shop lights that are zip tied. There's 2 on each shelf, and they're zip tied up. And I keep all my seedling trays up here. And so these are the ones we just did. I don't need to have the lights on right now because nothing's happening. But once these germinate, I will keep the lights on and they'll be able to grow. When you're growing seeds in your house, the thing that I think home gardeners struggle with the most is proper lighting. Plants need light to grow, plain and simple. And if they don't have enough light, what happens is they start to grow towards any light source they can find. It can be like a ceiling light or a window, but they're gonna stretch and stretch and stretch, and then they will probably just kind of fall over and die. And the seedling at that point is called being leggy, and that's just when it's just stretching toward whatever light source it can get. So when you are growing any kind of plants in your house, you wanna have proper lighting to mimic the sun as best as possible. And so these shop lights that I have been using, this is my 3rd year using these lights. They are daylight bulbs, They're very bright, and I believe they're about 5,000 lumens. So when you're looking for lights to grow your seeds, you don't have to actually go out and buy specific grow lights marketed for plant growing. These are shop lights. They are something that you would use in like your garage. You just have to make sure they are bright enough to support growing plants. Now these plants wouldn't be able to flower with this kind of light. I'm not trying to get these plants to flower in my house. They're gonna do that outside when they get the rays from the sun. So I don't need like a full spectrum bulb. A daylight 5,000 lumen bulb is going to do the trick. I will put a link down below to the Amazon listing for these bulbs. I did get the 4-pack of bulbs because I knew that I wanted to have several shelves with these lights on them, and for me it has worked best to have 2 shop lights for every shelf. So I'm actually thinking about investing in 4 more lights this year so I can get my bottom 2 shelves there with lights, and I can have this whole thing properly filled up, because 2 shelves is not enough space for me, but it might be for you. And then if you didn't want to have like a big rack like that, you could set up something similar in your windowsill, on a table somewhere. As long as you have a way to kind of hang your lights above your plants, then you're in a good spot. So what I've got growing right now are onions. Some have done better than others. I started these in the beginning of January. These are leeks. And all my other onion seeds, they weren't germinating. I was having trouble with them. The seeds I think were too old, so I bought more onion seeds that, you know, I've talked about in some of my seed haul videos. So I went ahead and sowed those, and they are just starting to come up, as you can see in here. And here's some more. So I just put these clear plastic dome lids over my plant cups here, and I'm going to keep these lids on until these germinate. This is going to help with controlling the moisture inside and will help the soil from drying out too quickly, and it speeds up germination. And once the seeds do germinate, then I will go ahead and remove the lids just like these ones up here. I hope you enjoyed today's video and are as excited as I am that we are in seed starting season. This is just my first batch. We've got a lot to go, but it feels good to have been able to get some of that done today, and I'm very excited for all of these seeds to germinate and get that food back on our table that much quicker. Just a couple months and we will have fresh greens again. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, Sandals and Steel Toes, so you can stay up to date on all of the garden happenings this year, how-to videos, garden tours, and you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Sandals and Steel Toes, or on TikTok at Lex in the Garden. Do me a favor, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you're starting in your gardens this time of year. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.